There's a lot of debate about whether cage eggs should be phased out and free-range eggs brought in and actually have that as law. Now, anyone that knows me that I would be pro the phasing out of cage eggs. And I've just been listening to an interview by ABC Rural. This was back a couple of months ago, and I just wanted to comment on a few points that the person is making. So let's just listen to what she has to say.
The decision yesterday by agricultural ministers was not what we expected. We were hoping that cage farming could continue in Australia until 2046, and the reason for that timing is really the fact that there are very long lead times in the planning and building of farms, but also that many of the farms have debts that need to be paid off over a 30-year period.
Well, the animal welfare advocates are suggesting that 13 years is actually too slow. What's the feedback from customers and consumers? They've been moving away, certainly, from the caged egg purchases.
Listen to this. It's a really interesting response.
Look, I think people are looking at the figures around supermarkets purely, and there's a lot of other eggs that are sold outside of supermarkets, at your local fruit shop, at the butchers. There's many avenues for sales, and so there are a lot of people that are on tight budgets that essentially buy from those places. So the idea that the consumer doesn't want caged eggs, if it's market driven, if the consumers weren't buying caged eggs, we wouldn't have cage egg farmers. So for that reason, we just want people to be able to have the choice and choose the.
Now, I'm going to comment here because that is an extraordinary thing to say. So firstly, I've never actually gone to a butcher or a small supermarket and seen anything other than free-range eggs. They tend to specialise in free-range eggs. But let's just put that aside for a second and talk about Coles and Woolworths. There is absolutely no way that any major supermarket would put an item on the shelf that doesn't sell. They're not going to allocate shelf space to something that doesn't sell. And it wouldn't matter how vocal the animal rights activists are. If the product doesn't sell, then they wouldn't have it on the shelves. So saying that we're only taking supermarkets as a guide is not true. The supermarkets are actually leading the way, and they're leading the way because it is consumer driven. They've got no other reason to do it. It's actually consumer driven. So I don't agree with that at all. The other thing is that she's talking about the costs to people, and that people that do live on a budget. And I absolutely accept that eggs are a staple diet for a lot of people. To say that consumers that are on a budget will be highly inconvenienced by this, I find a bit of a stretch. Do consider what free-range farmers that practice sustainable agriculture feel and think about the animals that they're raising. One is a pack of cage eggs where the animal is living in absolute misery for their short life, and the other are chickens running around and doing what chickens naturally do. Let's see what else this person has to say.
Choose the eggs that they'd like to purchase.
Murray, what the Minister has said, that this idea that eggs are suddenly going to spike in price or double in price is a scare campaign. What are you basing that concern over?
Well, look, I've been working off the data that's coming out of New Zealand. I mean, each country has its own market systems and structures, and there is a difference. But, we do believe that eggs will rise in price. As to how much, that remains to be seen. But certainly based on the New Zealand situation where they've phased out their cages, their eggs went from $4.88 in 2021 and are now around $8.50, $9. That was in April. So you can see there that the egg price has increased, and we would see that if you take out one whole production system in Australia, there is going to be an impact on the price of eggs.
Just how many hens are we talking about that are caged, and what is the balance between caged eggs that hit the shelves in Australia and the cage-free variety?
Well, look, the actual national flock is around 21 million birds, and certainly we believe that the cage numbers are around 9 million birds in cages. So when you look at that split, there is a substantial number. It takes around 5 to 8 years to actually build a new egg farm. So if we're looking at the time frame, if it takes 8 years for a new farm to be built because of all the regulations and requirements, we're really looking at a long lead time to be able to transition hens from cage to another system. And we've also got some farmers that are landlocked, so they're in areas where they can't expand, and that's why we're asking governments that if they are looking at a date that's sooner than 2046, that they consider compensation through structural adjustment or exit packages for those farmers that will leave the industry. I mean,
that I would like to comment on that as well. I think that's probably one of the that is looking at a solution, that the farmers need to be compensated, and I think that that's fair enough too. And so there are ways and means of doing that. It's not a negative. It's not to say, well, it's going to take 8 years, so and it's going to cost money, and we've got to retrain these farmers, and isn't that awful? So we can't possibly do it. How about turning that around and saying, why don't we do it? Why don't we do this? Because it's right for all sorts of reasons. She also quoted that there were 21 million hens in the system. She quoted that there were 21 million hens in the system, and 9 million of them were caged. So that says to me that most hens are not caged. So in fact, the balance is quite the opposite. So we're not talking about farmers having to change the majority of farmers have to change. It's actually the minority of farmers that need to change. And all of the research that I've done and the conversations that I've had with farmers, I think that they might be surprised that a lot of farmers would actually like to change if they have that farming mentality and they care about their animals. I'd say if it takes 8 years, fine. It takes 8 years. Just get it done.
I mean, that's the concern too, is that the fact that if farmers are leaving, that reduces the egg production capacity for our nation. And I think we need to look at the issue of food security in the long term.
Wow, 8 years to build a new farm to comply with what the move is here. That's fairly substantial. Also, just before you go, the idea that some states may not follow this same time path. What does that mean to not have a national approach?
Well, look, certainly that's the thing with these standards. We were wanting a national approach. It does mean that, we have eggs that cross borders on a daily basis. So it means that a hen in Queensland will probably be treated differently maybe to a hen in another state in New South Wales or elsewhere. So we were really hoping to have that consistency, that the timing for all of the standards started in each state at the same time. So it is...
And just one final note on that. Yes, why aren't all hens treated equally? Why does a Queensland egg have to be different to a New South Wales egg or a WA egg? The argument here is that the Egg Board are saying that they want more time. The ABC is saying that they'll be phasing out caged eggs by 2036. To me, that does seem like a long time. And if it does take that long, it takes that long. But why don't we all just get together and make it happen? Clearly, the consumer wants that to happen.